Hey, it's Benji Cole, son of Al Cole from CBS Radio and host of People of Distinction, the talk that gives an in-depth view of some of the most dynamic, intelligent, and successful people on the planet. Run to our website, peopleofdistinction.org for more info, or you can always email me directly at benji@alcoleenterprises.com. And on the line with us today, we have Jack Worrill. We're going to be discussing his amazing book, Parables for the Purposeful Walk. Now, it's available for purchase through Amazon as well as barnesandnoble.com. But people, get this. If you want to gather everything that Jack has in store, well, do yourself a favor and head directly to his personal site. And that's jackworrill.com. There you'll find more information on him, more information on this fantastic book, Parables for the Purposeful Walk. In addition to that, you're also going to find two other books that he's written. One is called Parables for Plain People. The next, More Parables for Plain People, Observations of Fufu the Wise, all of which are available for purchase through this site. You'll find hyperlinks there set up to take you to those purchasing pages. So head on over there. I'm telling you, it's a one-stop shop, jackworrill.com. And before we go any further, I do want to take this opportunity and point out that Jack was brought to our network, People of Distinction, today by one of the best publishers in the business. And of course, I'm talking about Author Reputation Press. People, if you're a writer out there or you know someone that is, I'm going to give you some fantastic advice that you could take to the bank. If you need help moving your literary creation, contact Author Reputation Press. They're one of the best in the business to do it, and this is what they specialize in, okay? So head on over to authorreputationpress.com today and gather all of the ways that they can help you take advantage of your creative endeavors. And listen, it is a true pleasure, okay, an absolute delight to have Jack here on the line. This is a collection of devotions, right? A collection of devotional writings that's going to help you and really going to assist you through that journey. And at the end of the day, Jack is the expert. He's written the book and he's done the research. He's going to be able to articulate it much better than I ever could. But I'm telling you, this is a resource that's going to need to be on your shelf. It's a fantastic resource for you, and it's an even better gift to get for someone else to put on theirs. By the time we're finished here today, you're going to understand why I say that. Without further ado, let's jump right in. Jack, first and foremost, welcome to People of Distinction, and thank you very much for being a guest. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great, Benji. I'm having a good day, and this is kind of the capping the climax of a good day.
There you have
Proud
it.
to be here.
Well, listen, we're proud to have you, and we're really looking forward to this, Jack. I meant what I said in my intro. I think what you're doing here is special. I think what you're doing here is profound and really something that is needed. Because we know, listen, I don't even have to go. I was talking in generalizations during my opening, but let's get down to specifics here. Just within these past few years, given the political divide, the pandemic that we are largely past, but still experiencing to certain degrees by this point. I mean, there's a lot happening. And I think your book is wonderfully timed in terms of the assistance that it's going to be able to provide. So thank you for being a guest. Thank you for writing the book. And before we go into the words that are on those pages, Jack, start by telling us a little bit more about your background.
About 86 years ago, I was born in Atlanta, Georgia. I spent 35 years in the printing direct mail advertising business. And during a period of time that my business was not doing well, he directed me into some other activities. I developed a craft that is now my livelihood. I do chair caning and furniture restoration, of all things. But during that time, I began to put some thoughts on paper, writing some things that I thought might be worth sharing. And that was the source of my first two books and of this one that we're working on today.
Jack, I love that. And, such a wonderful origin story here. And I wasn't planning on going to this next, but after that intro, how could I go anywhere else? Let's continue to talk about inspiration here. You said your background and a career that you had, or a second career that you had, was in painting, right? You said chair painting, I believe.
Chair caning.
Oh, my apologies.
And if you've ever sat in a cane chair or in a porch rocker, then that's the sort of thing that I have been doing since my direct mail business is over, and I've been doing that as my principal livelihood for the better part of 30 years now.
Fantastic. Well, I have to ask, where does writing fit into all of that, Jack?
Well, part of I'm a bivocational minister of music as well. So in directing a choir, I would often find that I needed to give an illustration or an example to get the right mood and to get the sound or attitude that I wanted from the choir. And I would use these examples. And somebody told me, well, those are very interesting. You need to write those down. People would like to read them. And as I started trying to put some of those things down, the Lord just inspired me to make them a little bit more meaningful. So instead of a paragraph, I ended up with about a 5 to 7 minute development of what I refer to as parables. Mm-hmm. And when I was a kid in Sunday school, the Sunday school teacher described a parable as an earthly story with a heavenly meaning. And all of my parables start with a current event or a news item or a personal experience that I develop with some personal observations, and then I finish with a spiritual application. And those seem to be just right to collect and put into a book. And so the first one that I had was Parables for Plain People, ordinary people, just plain folks, not designed for the high, deep intellects. It's not supposed to be classic literature, but just for ordinary folks. And this is the third time I have had enough of a collection to generate 100 of these parables and put them into a book.
Jack, next question that I'd love to get into. Thank you very much for everything that you've articulated so far. Now, we know a little bit more about the book. We know about what inspired you to embark upon it. Well, a two-part question here, but first and foremost, who would you say is your intended audience with this book? Who is your intended reader? And B, what are the main messages or some of the themes that you hope that they take from it after completing it?
Well, they would apply to just about anybody that ever watches television or reads the newspaper or even watches YouTube or Facebook. These are all taken from those basic sources, and just about anybody that has ever experienced a situation where they wonder, well, what does this have any application for me? Does this have any spiritual significance? How is it going to help me with my daily walk? So there is really not, although I do expect these to be a more nearly adult audience, there's really not any other requirement than just to be available to sit down and read for 5 minutes.
Of course, we can't go into your full or any one of your full parables because, as you said, they generally take about 5 minutes. And the short interview like this, that takes up too much time. But, Jack, could you go into maybe one of your parables in terms of a description? And, maybe if there's a favorite one or one that you generally lean more towards, can you go into a little bit more of a description for that, please?
Well, I think the first one in this book is titled "The Parable of the Good Book," of the Good Book, mm-hmm. And it is, it started with a bumper sticker that I saw not too long ago that said, "Have you read any good book lately?" Now, you've heard people say, "Have you read any good books lately?" but this was Good Book with capital G and capital B, and their reference was the Bible.
Yeah.
So I started out talking about books in general, how I would come home from school and sit down after my homework and read a Zane Grey novel, and have enjoyed reading ever since. But then, more specifically, over the years, I have come to realize that the good book, the Bible, has more answers and more mysteries and more exciting storylines than any book that I'd ever read. And I encourage, in this parable, I encourage other people to spend a little bit more time in the good book to see what the Lord has in store for them today or in the days to come.
Mm-hmm. People, again, we're here on the line with Jack Worrill. We're discussing his amazing book, Parables for the Purposeful Walk. Available for purchase through Amazon, BarnesandNoble.com, but make sure to check out his personal site, jackworrill.com, today and gather everything that he has in store. You know, Jack, curiosity for myself with this next one, but what would you say was a highlight for you? Or if not a highlight, maybe something that surprised you during this writing journey that you weren't anticipating before you began?
Well, one of the questions I was prepared to address was who inspired me to be an author, but that is one of the surprising things that you're talking about. As I go back and read parables that I have included in this book and previous books, I am constantly surprised at what I read. And I have been convinced from the very beginning that I am not the author. God is. You may or may not, unless you've had to teach Sunday school and dig into some words for background, but there's a word in the New Testament that I found interesting. It is amanuensis. I won't try to spell it. It means Paul referred to his amanuensis. He referred to him by name. And when I looked it up years ago, I discovered that it is like what we would call today a secretary who's taking shorthand, who takes down all the notes and then transcribes them into material that is then typed out and shared or put in the mail, for instance. I think of myself more as the one who is taking dictation. And so I give all the credit for the good, except that there might be some things that are not so good, and I'll take responsibility for those. But give the Lord the credit.
People, I'm telling you, this is something that is needed because there's so much value in it. As I started off by saying, I mean, given what we're all experiencing to varying degrees, who amongst us has everything going in the right way and has no cares or worries or doesn't need encouragement, right? I mean, this book carries weight and carries so much. As we start to close out, because I do want to give you an opportunity to go into another one here, Jack, I mentioned to my listening audience, Parables for the Purposeful Walk is not the only title that you've written. You have two other books that you've written in the past, Parables for Plain People and More Parables for Plain People. All, I'm guessing, kind of coinciding in similar messages in terms of meant to inspire, encourage, and guide. Please, no one knows your books better than you. Choose another one of your titles and give us a brief description of what they entail so we know what is in store as well.
Before I pick out a title from one of them, let me just remind you that there's barely a day that goes by that everyone, each of us, doesn't have an experience or an observation that can turn the mind towards the Lord and spiritual things if given the opportunity. And so that is what I have attempted to do here. One of my favorites is the story of the definite deadline, which happens to be the last parable in Parables for the Purposeful Walk. And the illustration in the parable is this. We had just delivered somebody to catch a long-distance bus. And we saw the bus close the door and pull off, taking people on their road to the west. And as the bus passed the first traffic light and merged into traffic, we heard a horrible scream come from behind us. This lady was running, carrying her luggage with her, saying, "Bus, stop, stop, please stop." The bus had already gone. And the folks that had brought her had already left. And she was left standing there with her luggage, weeping hysterically. That was the experience that the parable was based on. The application was simply this. Each of us has more than one deadline in a lifetime. You hardly go through a day when there's not some deadline that you are having to consider. And we deal with those in different ways. We set our schedule so that we can make that deadline. However, there comes a deadline for each of us that we will face, and there will be no more opportunities to catch that spiritual bus. And so in the development of that parable of the definite deadline, I point out that it is important for us to pay attention to the Lord's schedule.
Yeah.
And to his plans for us, so that we will not run the risk of missing that deadline.
One more here. Jack, listen, you are filled with wisdom, man. I'm here for it, and I'm trying to get every last little bit out of it because I know my listening audience needs it. Well, I want to switch gears here. This is the third book in which you've written, hopefully many more on the horizon. Well, for any new writers out there, someone just starting off on that writing journey, what are some words of wisdom that you can offer them about that adventure they're getting ready to embark upon?
I would give them one bit of advice. First of all, decide if you have something that you think is worth sharing. What the audience would be that you would aim for. And then just sit down and write. I don't care whether you're tipping it out on your phone or whether you're using your laptop or computer or, heaven forbid, on a typewriter. But sit down and put your words on paper. People don't do that much these days, do they? And the other bit of advice, the thing that really made the difference for me, and I'll back up and say one thing. I started writing these thoughts and parables down in 2000. And between 2000 and 2010, I had maybe a dozen. In 2010, I was inspired to concentrate more time on my writing. And so I promised myself and promised the Lord that I would take the Tuesday and Thursday of every week. I would get up an hour before my usual time, and I would write whatever the Lord inspired me to write, whether it was a newspaper article or a personal experience when I spilled my morning dose of coffee, or just whatever the experience would be. And I would develop that into a parable. You can do the same thing with any kind of writing, whether you're writing verse or prose. But the main thing is to be available to receive that inspiration, and then finally to sit down and write it out. Mm-hmm. And that's the way you share it. One of my favorite verses was by Oscar Hammerstein. It said, "A bell's not a bell till you ring it. A song's not a song till you sing it. Love in your heart wasn't put there to stay. Love isn't love till you give it away. And your inspirations are the same way. Those inspirations are meant to be shared. And if you have one, don't hesitate to sit down and write it out and then share it. That's the word from who my grandchildren call Fufu the Wise.
There you have it. People, listen, if you're like me, you're sold, okay? There's not much left that needs to be said. And I know I don't have to re-impress it for you all, but I'm going to say it once again, okay? Amazon, Barnes & Noble, jackworrill.com are the places you have to go. Okay, the main anchor for today's interview is Parables for the Purposeful Walk. But check out his other two as well, Parables for Plain People and More Parables for Plain People, Observations of Fufu the Wise. I love these titles. I love the titles. I love the alliteration. They're just fun to say. Listen, head on over there and pick up these books. If this interview hasn't moved you, you're asleep, okay? You need to wake up or get passed by because we all need this. Even if you're doing great in life right now and you don't need any inspiration, you don't need any guidance. Listen, I don't care how well you're doing. I feel like for me personally, I could always use an extra word, an extra bit of motivation and inspiration. That's never a bad thing. But let's just say you are someone that you feel like you're in a place where you don't need anything else. You're going so well. Well, this is still a great resource to have on your shelf because one thing that I've always lived by is the notion of this too shall pass. So listen, even when you're at your highest highs or you're at your lowest lows, always keep that in the back of your mind that this too shall pass. So stay humble, stay dedicated on your road, and continue to push through. This is why a book of this magnitude, or books rather, of this magnitude, are wonderful resources to add to your shelf and even better gifts for someone else's. Head on over there today, pick up your copies. You can thank me later. Jack, this has been a true pleasure, an absolute delight. Thank you once again for being a guest on People of Distinction.
Joy is mine, Benji. Thank you so much.